Scalped by Comanches while temporarily paralyzed. Josiah Wilbarger was fully conscious but felt nothing as the warrior ran the knife around the top of his head. When the Comanche yanked his hair free, Wilbarger heard a sound like distant thunder, and everything went black. This is the most famous ghost story in Texas history. It's also the tale of how a pioneer woman's dream saved a dying man. This is the Wilbarger scalping. August 1833. Texas pioneer Josiah Wilbarger rode into the frontier with 4 other men and a surveying party. 4 miles east of what is now downtown Austin, a band of Comanches attacked them in surprise. Warriors fired muskets and sent arrows flying from their bows. 2 men, Strother and Christian, fell wounded. 2 others, Haney and Standifer, mounted horses. They saw Wilbarger racing after them, an arrow in his calf, another shaft piercing his other leg. A musket ball hit the back of his neck and exited under his chin, blood spurting, and Wilbarger fell headlong. Comanches surrounded his body. Haney and Standifer spurred their horses, certain their friend was killed. But Wilbarger wasn't killed. He lay as though dead, but the musket ball had only bruised his spine. He was temporarily paralyzed, fully conscious but unable to even blink. The warriors cut the throats of Strother and Christian. Believing Wilbarger already dead, they stripped him of his clothes except for a single sock. Wilbarger lay in frozen horror as a warrior drew his blade to scalp him. The warrior made a cut around the top of his head, gripped a fistful of hair, and jerked. No pain, only distant thunder. He passed out. When Wilbarger woke, the Comanches were gone, and he was weak from blood loss, but now he could move. He crawled in agony to the creek bank to wash his wounds. Blowflies swarmed all about his head. He wet his sock in the creek and draped it over his naked skull to protect the wounds. He began crawling toward the nearest help, the cabin of pioneers Reuben and Sarah Hornsby, 6 miles away. He could feel maggots hatching in the raw, bloody skin at the crown of his head. The last of his strength left him. Josiah Wilbarger sat leaning against the trunk of an oak, falling in and out of consciousness, and prepared himself to die. Then something remarkable happened. In the twilight, he saw his sister Margaret walking toward him. He knew it was impossible. She should have been 700 miles away in Missouri. "Have no fear, Brother Josiah," she told him. "Help is on the way." "Margaret, my sister, stay with me till they come," he pleaded. But Margaret moved in the direction of the Hornsby cabin and vanished. Haney and Standifer had retreated back to the Hornsby cabin. They'd have to wait till reinforcements arrived the next day before they could recover the dead men. But that night Sarah Hornsby lay dreaming, and in her dream she saw Wilbarger, naked and scalped, sitting under a tree. Then she woke up. Sarah shook her husband awake and told him what she'd seen. "Just a dream," Reuben said. "Go back to sleep." And after a while, Sarah did manage to fall asleep, only to dream again. Once more she saw Wilbarger. Sarah sprang from bed and roused all the house. The men in the cabin all tried to calm her, and some even ridiculed her dream. Sarah returned to sleep, and the men returned to sleep, and the cabin was quiet. Twice as coincidence, 3 times as confirmation. When Sarah dreamed a 3rd time, the vision was clearer yet. About 3 o'clock in the morning, she rose from bed, resolute, and now she wouldn't take no for an answer. "As sure as God lives," she said, "Josiah Wilbarger is alive, scalped, and under a large tree by himself. If you are not cowards, go at once." At first light, Reuben and the others set out, riding back to the scene of the battle. They found the bodies of Christian and Strother immediately, but Wilbarger was nowhere to be seen. Then they spotted a naked, blood-caked figure sitting under a post oak, a sock crowning his scalped head. Exactly as Sarah Hornsby predicted. His appearance was so grisly, the men didn't recognize him until he rasped out, "It is Wilbarger." He told his rescuers of Margaret's visit in the night. The men carried Wilbarger back to the cabin, and Sarah cared for his wounds. Mail was slow making its way across the frontier in those days. Finally, one day, a letter arrived from Wilbarger's family in Missouri, informing him that his sister Margaret had died. She'd passed away the day before he was scalped, and at the hour of his vision, Margaret was spending her first night in the grave. The key to understanding this strange visitation might be found in an old Jewish tradition, one which claims the spirit of the recently deceased may linger in our world for 3 days after death. Some New Testament scholars believe this tradition is why Jesus chose to delay in going to his sick friend Lazarus, why he waited until Lazarus had been in the tomb at least 3 days before raising him from the dead. Jesus wanted the people to know it was truly a miracle. So we have to wonder, did Margaret's spirit briefly linger on to save her dying brother? A monument marking the approximate site of Wilbarger's scalping stands at 51st Street and Berkman Drive in Austin. Josiah and Sarah vouch for the truth of their stories to their dying day. Such things are not accidents, Josiah's brother wrote. They tell us of a spirit world and of a God who moves in a mysterious way his wonders to perform.